Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're traveling all the way back to 331 BC. We're going to unpack literally one of the most extraordinary and consequential moments in all of military history. I'm, of course, talking about the monumental clash at the Battle of Gaugamela. This was the ultimate showdown. On one side, you've got the young Macedonian king, Alexander the Great, and on the other, the ruler of the massive Persian Empire, King Darius III. The stakes here, absolutely astronomical. And the tactical lessons we can pull from this incredible encounter, they're totally timeless.
Okay, let's dive into this. The big question, how in the world do you defeat an army 5 times your size? Just picture it for a second. The air is thick with dust, you hear the absolute roar of tens of thousands of soldiers, you look across this vast plain and the enemy lines just keep going. They stretch as far as the eye can see, completely dwarfing your own guys. How do you even begin to wrap your head around a battle when the math is just so terrifyingly stacked against you?
To understand how this all played out, we enter Section 1, the ultimate underdog matchup, Alexander versus King Darius III.
To really grasp this classic clash of titans, it all boils down to one staggering number, and that number is 25. Alexander the Great was literally just 25 years old at the time of this epic battle. Just think about that for a second. At 25, he wasn't some rookie. He was already this battle-hardened veteran, leading his men thousands of miles away from home. Meanwhile, Darius, he commanded the unimaginable wealth and just the sheer crushing mass of the sprawling Persian Empire. So Alexander was the ultimate underdog here, super young, massively outnumbered, going toe-to-toe against the full, established might of the ancient world's premier empire.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Alexander was facing a terrifying numerical disadvantage. He brought roughly 47,000 troops to the field. Now, that's a lot of guys, right? But Darius brought the absolute full weight of his empire. He deployed anywhere from 100,000 to an estimated 250,000 soldiers. Alexander wasn't just outnumbered, he was practically swallowed whole. And that sheer volume of the Persian force, it was meant to be a massive psychological weapon, just as much as a physical one.
Moving right along to Section 2, Darius sets the trap on the Mesopotamian plains.
Now, Darius wasn't just banking on having more guys. He deliberately stacked the deck in his favor, with surgical precision. He purposely positioned his troops on these wide, totally flat Mesopotamian plains, basically near the modern-day border of Iraq and Turkey. And why there? Well, because he essentially wanted a giant, unencumbered runway for his devastating war chariots. His strategy was super straightforward, and honestly maybe a little arrogant. He just figured the wide open space and his overwhelming numbers would effortlessly steamroll right over the tiny Macedonian force.
But of course, here is where history takes a legendary turn. Section 3, Alexander's brilliant masterstroke, intellect over brute force.
You see, Alexander wasn't intimidated by a stacked deck. He looked at that sprawling, massive army and spotted a fatal flaw. Sure, the Persian army was huge, but it was also incredibly unwieldy. Alexander knew his edge wasn't in unwieldy numbers, it was in his quick-thinking intellect. So how did he pull it off? It honestly plays out like a perfectly executed heist movie. Step 1, Alexander ordered his troops to fake a retreat. He purposely drew Darius's forces forward, baiting them right into a false sense of security. And as Darius rushed in, stretching his massive lines super thin, Alexander snapped the trap shut. Step 2, he hit the now weakened Persian left flank incredibly hard. And finally, Step 3, he executed a breathtakingly precise pincer movement.
So the crucial point is understanding exactly what this specific maneuver did to the Persian forces. If you're not familiar, a pincer movement is a tactic where forces strike both flanks, or the sides, of an enemy formation to break their lines. By moving out to the outside and attacking the flanks, Alexander took that enormous size of the Persian army and flipped it into a massive vulnerability. He was actively dismantling their clunky formations from the inside in. It's just brilliant.
But look, analytical strategy, that is only half the story here. The rest is just raw, undeniable bravery. As this battle hit its absolute boiling point, Alexander didn't just sit back safely on a hill to watch it all unfold. No way. Alexander himself led the charge. He literally drove a wedge straight through those chaotic, crumbling Persian lines, aiming his forces directly at King Darius himself. Just imagine the pure terror and shock rippling through the Persian ranks as they saw this 25-year-old kid, fueled by sheer charisma and absolute fearlessness, barreling straight toward their leader. Which brings us to Section 4, the fall of an empire and the legacy of Gaugamela. Seeing his front lines completely crumble under Alexander's relentless assault, Darius panicked. He fled, utterly abandoning his troops and leaving his massive army in total, complete disarray.
And man, the dominoes fell fast after that. In 331 BC, this one single tactical victory completely shattered the long-standing myth of Persian invincibility. It was gone. In the immediate aftermath of Darius running away, that once mighty army just fell apart. Alexander instantly cemented himself as one of the greatest military tacticians who ever lived. And looking into the future, his massive vision of conquest became a reality, with his empire eventually stretching all the way from Greece to India. Basically, an entire world order was built right on the back of this one pivotal battle.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our core takeaway. It really comes down to a classic clash. On one side, you have brute force. Overwhelming numbers, sure, but plagued by an unwieldy size that just couldn't pivot or adapt. On the exact opposite side, you have intellect, the sheer willingness to take a calculated risk like faking a retreat and using strategic flanking to literally weaponize the enemy's size against them. Alexander carved his name into the annals of history not with sheer muscle, but for sure with a much sharper mind. It really underscores this powerful truth. History isn't just written in books, it's made on the battlefield. Great leaders don't just win fights, they completely change the course of human history. Because they look at an impossible situation, they totally refuse to be intimidated by it, and they outthink the opponent. Which ultimately brings us back to you. Because we all face massive obstacles in our own lives, right? We have situations where we feel vastly outnumbered, totally under-resourced, or just plain overwhelmed. So when you are staring down an obstacle 5 times your size, whatever that looks like for you, how will you use brilliant strategy to conquer brute force? Keep that question in mind this week. Take a little bit of Alexander's tactical mindset with you and look for those hidden weaknesses in your own challenges. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll see you next time.